Mr. Benedict David of Universidad de Manila.
Alright, so good afternoon everyone. I'm Dr. Benedict David from the University of Manila. Also, my regards if Dr. Trinidad is here. He was my colleague University of Teaching in the University of Santo Tomas Graduate School. So regards ko, I have seen the name earlier sa presentation. So tell my regards to the advisee. Alright, so as we begin, allow me to present my study, which is basically this one. Allow me to have it. Okay, tell me if it's not workable. Yeah. Tell me if you cannot see it. Alright, so for my title, it's about social marketing as an intervention to poverty management amidst or in the midst of the pandemic. So basically, why did I choose this study? The reason is that in poverty management, whether in any book such as the book of Mikhail Chossudovsky and even Jeffrey Sachs, poor people tend to have this what you call one-day millionaire attitude, which further aggravates their current and dismal economic way of life and personal and financial way of life, to say the least. And given the pandemic wherein employment has been more scarce than ever, and given that our current economic situation brought about by the dreaded COVID-19, which imposed a lot of lockdowns, primarily this prompted the proponent, yours truly, to develop or to merge a certain social marketing paradigm, being a marketer myself, and that social marketing, if it can be used to achieve a social good. So for example, how do we define social marketing? We define social marketing as the upliftment of a certain public or social benefit, more commonly used in public health, like for example, in cigarette packs, cigarette smoking is dangerous to your health. Or for example, drink moderately if we're talking of liquors and other alcoholic beverages. So if we can be able to use that in the upliftment or in the enhancement of public health and welfare, I think and my study can be used also to develop or to address certain poverty issues in line with that so-called one-day millionaire attitude of the poor. So if this can be used to uphold public health, it can also be used to develop or to help poor people to manage their poverty levels or to graduate, if the term is right, from poverty. So in line, my rationale or the rationale of this research is primarily to profile the poor's behavioral mindset through the manifestation of vices. Now, why vices or bad habits? For example, if a person smokes around 10 sticks of cigarettes a day, I don't know if it's already called a chain smoker or not. I'm not in the medical practice, but if he can limit it to around 6, 7, or maybe 5 sticks eventually, then it can be a good start. Instead of buying all those 10 sticks of cigarette or drinking all those 3 or 4 bottles of beer or whatever a day or a week, maybe he or she can save it so that he can provide for his family even better and even more. So that's the usage of social marketing in this research. And of course, there should be what I call a purposive admittance or a purposive predication, because basically the respondents are of course poor, or at least in the median urban poverty level, or basically those who are living below the poverty line, and also those who are living in key cities. Why did they choose key cities? Because in urban poverty management, or in the urban poverty milieu, ladies and gentlemen, they don't have much of a livelihood. Unlike in the rural setting wherein they can plant, for example, in Tagalog, they can plant gabi, they can plant root crops. But in the urban setting, even though, like for example, being a member of Rotary International and Freemasonry myself, we do have outreach programs for urban vegetable farming, but it's not always applicable because of the lack of arable and potent land. Unlike in the rural poverty or in the rural setting, they can live with the exchange of gabi, palay, bigas, or whatever. But in the urban setting, it is very scarce to be implemented. So we are here to cut their vices, to have a change in perception using social marketing through vice reduction. So moving further, what would be the research methodology? The proponent, yours truly, adopted the paradigm of Levy and Saltman, wherein the type of social change will be inoculated or will be indoctrinated. First and foremost, we have to change the behavior first, as what social marketing is all about. If we can change the behavior gradually, of course, we can change their lifestyle. For example, in my case, or in this panel, or in this room, definitely here we are all middle class or even up. God knows what our respective profiles are, of course. But definitely, if we say, for example, although I don't smoke, my habit is basically drinking milk tea every day. So can people tell me, Benedict, stop drinking milk tea. You're going to get poor if you're going to drink milk tea every day. Besides the usual getting of diabetes or so, then I will tell them, no, back off. I can afford it. So it's not applicable for the middle income. But for the poor people to have such kinds of vices, instead of saving up so that they will have more resources to go about for a rainy day. Like for example, if they can save 200, 300 pesos a month, for us it may be a small amount, although for me, hindi, of course. Where would you pick 100 pesos walking from your house to your work? Nada, di ba? But if they can save 200, 300 pesos or whatever amount, it can already result to incremental savings as time goes by. And it all will boil down to a parameter of behavioral change. We should change the mindset first. And eventually, hopefully, we can change the lifestyle of those impoverished Filipino respondents. So a total of purposefully selected 200 impoverished laboring Filipino poor people from those who are employed like carpentry, in Tagalog, labandera, they were basically selected for this study because they fit the profile of what a median urban poverty person is all about. So moving further, what are my significant findings for this study? First and foremost, there should be an admission about their current poverty state of life. And based on this table, it was clearly manifested, it was clearly evident that they admit to their poverty. There's no shame on that, not even a protection against data privacy. No, of course not. Their details were properly hidden. It was kept private, of course. So basically about perception and poverty, they admitted that they lack financial discipline. Or at least 60% of them, a vast majority of them, way above the quorum, admitted that they lack financial discipline. While the second one as well, although the responses would exceed 100% due to multiple answers, of course, but 6 out of 10 admitted that they lack the financial discipline, and that is good enough reason for us to instill a financial disciplinary paradigm to help them in their standard of living, specifically in this part or in this parcel of the pandemic. In Tagalog, huwag tayo asa sa ayuda. Let's not just wait for the government to do it. It all starts within us. And that is the advocacy of my presentation and the beauty of this research. To first let them admit that they're at fault without any biases or prejudice, of course taking it professionally, but having the sensitivity to help them uplift their way of life, even in small things, even through the basic behavioral and lifestyle sense. Moving further, I asked them about the relationship to vices, or do they have vices? Yes, most common habits, of course, in Tagalog, ABS, alak, babae, sugal. In their jargon, so they do gamble, they do smoke, and they do drink beer, or they do drink any alcoholic beverage, maybe Red Horse, maybe Ginebra. I rather not ask why na, of course. It's their private life, it's their privacy already. But the point is, they do admit that their habits contribute negatively on their financial management or in their personal financial standing. And they believe that if they can have this discipline, they will be having a potential to develop a better way of life or a better status, of course gradually. But the problem is, where would they start? Nobody would have reminded them. I'm not saying that this study is really pilot in nature, of course, but basically there should be a reminder for them. In Tagalog, pupukpukin natin. There should be someone to constantly remind them, or something to prove and prompt them that this should be the correct mindset and this should be the correct lifestyle. In a previous study that I have published this year, it's about asidia. Asidia means stagnation or laziness. It's also evident. So something or some programs or a program or a paradigm must be clearly present in order to remind them that this is the right thing to do. We are not going to cut their vices totally. If they want to, they can in due time. Ika nga ay sa tamang panahon. if they can in due time, but we're just going to cut it minimally until they can gradually master it. It's like a rehabilitation program on a social scale, of course, on a micro social scale. So other findings include, basically, I put them in a program between 1 to 5 months this year. I think it's between June to October, if I'm not mistaken. So they underwent a program. Cluster 1, I divided it equally per cluster, 1 month up to 5 months. Of course, the results were those who underwent 5 months had a higher result, while those who underwent 5 months of social marketing program through vice reduction, uh, not many, but some of them already had a relapse, of course, because they find the behavioral discipline, of course, hard to maintain. But it's a good start. It's a good start, basically, because something is now being reminded, or is currently reminding them to stop, or basically, to control their vices and their habits, so that they can cope with this trying and with these dire times. As simple as it may be, some would say it would be a cliche, but it's not. Why? Because primarily, as simple as this, it will lead to greater understanding of how they behave and how they spend. And if they can spend only according or even below what they earn, then they can have a better standard of living. That is the predication, or that is the focal point of poverty management, my friends. So the results revealed that 65%, or I don't know what the exact number, out of 200 respondents, said they were able to control and save a little bit of money for not only for the rainy days, but for their personal expenditures. Like, for example, I was able to interview one head of the family. He is a jeepney driver, a public utility vehicle for our foreign friends here. He was able to save 500 in 2 months, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory is still right. So, given that they were able to buy more food on the table than the rest, they just put it in their wallet for savings. I mean, 100, 200, for them, it's already a good start. And for them, it's already a good kindling point rather to establish personal and social discipline. So, of course, parallel studies in health and wellness will manifested, of course. Like, for example, if you're a chain smoker, if you're smoking, they develop what you call a better sense of their well-being. One respondent even told me that after getting his second jab of the vaccination, he told me that he is already COVID-proof. Well, I leave that to the opinion of the respondent anymore. But because of the reduction in smoking and matched with all of these medical programs, I think most of the respondents have basically proven that it can be an effective program. So, other significant findings, of course, the shorter the immersion, of course, the better the result. But it's not a lost cause, of course, because basically those who have a longer immersion means that the advocacy should be further reminded onto them. They still have potential, of course. Of course, nothing is 100% effective, of course, but if I can reach 70%, as what this discussion has been all about, it's fine. 7 out of 10 people who are already mastering discipline, financial discipline in the midst of poverty, that's already fine. 7 out of 10 Filipinos who can be able to control their vices through social marketing, I think that's already fine. And I can take that already. It means that majority is having the proper disposition to make a good and clarified life status, or to have a good and clarified life disposition per se, ladies and gentlemen. So what would be my summary and recommendations for my future research direction? Basically, of course, it could be that social marketing can be used as an intervention. It is, of course, feasible, and it can be even implemented on a macro scale, not just on a community or barangay level, because I did it in selected barangays within Metro Manila based on my contacts from me being a Rotarian and a Freemason per se. Maybe for the entire Philippine archipelago, it can be adopted also. And poverty can also be managed through another multifaceted approach, meaning the future researchers can be recommended to have a further direction through this. Maybe a longer study, not just only within 1 to 6 months. Maybe a longitudinal study of 1-2 years can be implemented to fully measure the beauty and the applicability of this research. But in this part and parcel, we can further conclude that if we can establish the mindset and the discipline, then we can really achieve something good. So that ends my brief presentation. I hope that we were able to understand the advocacy of poverty management in this very trying times, specifically on the poverty level. So these are my contact details, my email, and maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Dr. David, for that presentation. Indeed, change